there. I'm Dr. Christina, a doctor of physical therapy, and I get asked all the time, what kind of stretching should I be doing? Should I be doing dynamic stretching? Should I be doing static stretching? Should I be doing stretching with a hot pack? Should I stretch before activity, after activity? What do I do? So I'm going to tell you today, what are the different types of stretches? When should you choose to do each of those? And I'm going to give an example of hamstring, quad, and calf stretching and tell you when to use each of these before or after activity. So let's start off with what's the difference between a dynamic stretch and a static stretch, all right? Dynamic stretch, by its name, you can guess, means you're moving as you're stretching. So for example, a dynamic stretch for a hamstring would be doing hamstring scoops where you're walking with the stretch and you're not holding, okay? Dynamic stretches are perfect for doing before activity because when you're starting out an activity like running, golfing, tennis, pickleball, whatever you are doing, you're not warmed up, right? You're starting with cold, kind of more rigid muscles. They're not ready to glide. The fibers in your muscles is easily against each other. So we want to warm those up with some movement. Again, you're not holding with a dynamic stretch, you're moving, okay? A static stretch would be a type of stretch that you do after you're done moving because your muscles are all warmed up. They're ready to go ahead and hold that elasticity, make permanent changes, and they're going to help you become flexible, not just in the moment, but in the long term. So an example of a static stretch for a hamstring would be hinging over in the same way, but holding, all right? And as you may remember in my videos previously, a stretch needs to be held for at least 30 seconds, all right? Research has shown that if you're holding anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds, you're getting the most benefit you can from a stretch. Once you go past that 90 seconds, they didn't see much additional improvement, which is why we have that range there for you. But oftentimes I ask clients, they say, I do all this stretching, I stretch all the time, and I say, well, how long are you holding that stretch for? And they'll tell me, oh, like a count of 5, a count of 10, and I'll say, okay, first off, you're making no lasting changes, so we need to be holding for at least 30 seconds, all right? So like we've learned, when to do a dynamic stretch is going to be before activity, and when to do a static stretch is going to be after activity. Now, how do I choose which of those stretches to do? There's a zillion and one stretches that I could do. How do I choose? Well, like I said, I'm going to give you 3 examples for leg stretches today, but there's plenty of stretches for your back, for your core, for your arms, for your neck, and you can stretch any part of your body. So you want to choose stretches based on what's the activity you're about to do. These stretches are going to be really good for runners because I'm about to use my hamstrings, my quads and hip flexors, and my calf muscles to propel me forward and keep me going as I'm running. So I want to stretch those exact muscles. I want to dynamically warm them up, and then I want to statically hold stretch when I'm done running, so I make sure that those tight muscles that might have developed from using my muscles more than I actually do on a daily basis, they're going to stretch back out and not give me any prolonged soreness, all right? So let's go over some examples of dynamic and static stretches for those different body parts. We already kind of went over hamstring, but I want to get a little bit more specific because you know me, I'm a picky PT, all right? So for your hamstring stretches, if you're doing the scoops to do a dynamic warm-up, you're going to want to make sure that both of your feet are facing forward, okay? No feet turning out like a duck. You got to make sure that they're facing forward. Even when you hinge forward, what a lot of people will do is they'll make just like, boop, I just turned it out a little bit. That's not acceptable. We got to keep those toes pointed forward. We're also going to hinge from our hips, not round from our back, all right? You're cutting out most of the benefit when you round from your back. So we're going to hinge from our hips, scoop down, sitting our glutes backwards, all right? Scoop down, and then we're going to move on to the next leg and scoop down, and the next leg and scoop down, okay? That's going to be a dynamic hamstring stretch. You could do that for about 10 steps for each leg in one direction and do it back. Shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes. A static stretch with that same exact positioning, standing, would be propping your leg up on something or keeping it down on the ground. And same as the other one, you've got to keep those feet in neutral, facing the direction that you're about to stretch in, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and hinge from the hips, same as the other one. The only change is really that we're gonna hold it for a prolonged period, okay? We're gonna hold down here for that 30 to 90 seconds. And if I feel like as I'm holding, I could go a little bit further, go right on ahead. If after 30 seconds, I'm like, well, I could go a little further. And then after 60 seconds, well, I could go a little further. That's all okay. You're allowed to keep going with that stretch while you're holding. If you want to do a seated hamstring stretch though, one of my favorite ones is going to be just sitting with your legs out in front of you, okay? Again, pelvis is in neutral. We don't have the legs turned out, okay? Hinging from the hips, not rounding from the back. Hinging from the hips and holding that stretch, you guessed it, at least 30 to 90 seconds, okay? The next body part we're gonna do an example of stretching for is going to be your quads and your hip flexors, all right? Did you know that one of your quadricep muscles actually crosses two joints? Your rectus femoris muscle crosses your knee and your hip joint. So it's both a knee quadricep, knee extensor muscle and a hip flexor muscle, all right? So one of my favorite stretches for runners to work on this is going to be, we're gonna show two standing ones. So it's gonna be a runner's lunge stretch where you've got the front knee bent, back leg is straight, and then what a lot of people will do is they'll just lunge forward with it, all right? And yeah, you might get a stretch there, but because of where your muscle attaches and ends, you're not getting the best stretch, all right? So instead, you're gonna make sure that those hips are square, feet are in neutral, just like with your hamstring. You're going to do a pelvic tilt, okay? Bringing that pubic bone more forward and tucking that tailbone down will get you a better stretch in your hip flexor than just lunging forward. Now remember, if it's dynamic, you're not holding, you're moving through it, okay? If you were holding for a static stretch, that would look like holding here for 30 to 90 seconds. For the quadricep muscle, we've all seen people do butt kicks as they're warming up. That's a very easy warm up for your quadricep muscles. So you're just gonna do a little bit of butt kicking, which will get you contracting your hamstrings, but stretching your quads at the same time. And if you wanted to hold, you're gonna go ahead and pick up that leg, keeping your hips in neutral, like we've said with all the other stretches, okay? Hips in neutral. You cannot just go, okay, I'll twist now because I've got my leg up. You still have to keep those hips in neutral. You also wanna make sure that that knee is in line with the other knee. It can't be forward because then you're cutting off part of the quadricep stretch. You gotta extend that leg just a little bit so it's in line with the other one and you're feeling a nice stretch across the front of your thigh. Remember, hold 30 to 90 seconds if you're doing a static stretch of this. The last exercise we're gonna do is for your calf muscles, okay? A dynamic warm-up for that would be walking calf lunge stretches. So we already kind of went over how a runner's lunge, if you add that pelvic tilt, is gonna be getting your hip flexor and a little bit of your quadricep muscle. But if instead you focus on lunging forward and keeping your back heel down, you're gonna get more of a calf stretch, okay? If that back heel's coming up, that calf stretch went away. So that back heel has to stay down. If we're doing it dynamically, you're just gonna walk through it, stretching each one. I almost like to drive my knee, my heel down just a little bit more at the end so I get a nice calf stretch. If I was holding this same position, lunge, all right, hips square, feet in neutral, I know you're shocked. And then we're going to hold this stretch with the knee straight, heel down for 30 to 90 seconds, okay? These are stretches that you can do before and after your run, or before and after your activity if you are going to be using these specific muscles, your hamstrings, your quadriceps, hip flexors, and your calf muscles. And remember, dynamic is for before, static is for after. If you find that trying this change-up of stretches alone is not fixing your issue, your pain that you're having, your tension, then please seek out a neuromuscular expert, a physical therapist who can assess you, watch how you're running, watch how you're moving, watch how you're doing those stretches, and make sure that you're doing them correctly, all right? And we'd love to help you out with that, okay? We want you to be as independent as possible, be able to make choices for yourself in the future as to when do I do which type of stretch and how. And if you found this video helpful, please go ahead and share with your family, your friends, your running group. Let them know that there's this free education out there. We want this information to reach as many people as possible who would find it helpful. And then comment below to let me know what other type of videos you'd like me to make, or which stretch was the most helpful for you.